Welcome to Comadres y Comics. Comadres y Comics is a podcast hosted by 3 Latina women.
We highlight the Latinx presence in the comic book industry as creators, characters, and fans.
Join us as we talk chisme, comics, fandom, and beer. Hello and welcome to a new episode of Las Platicas. Who do we have in studio today, Kristen?
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode, like Sarah said, of Las Platicas. It's our show that we host, Comadres y Comics, where we meet with creators and friends to talk about upcoming projects, events, and all-around awesome news in the Latinx comic community. Today, we're excited to welcome 2 powerhouse voices in storytelling who are coming together for a truly amazing comics project. First up is Frederick Luis Aldama, aka Professor Latinx, Eisner Award-winning scholar, author, and editor who's dedicated his career to celebrating and expanding Latinx representation in comics. As the founder of Latinographix, Frederick has helped launch dozens of voices into the comics world, always pushing for narratives that reflect the vibrancy, complexity, and resilience of our communities. Joining him is Angela M. Sánchez, a brilliant Mexican-American writer that specializes in writing action-adventure stories soaked in magic that center on themes of found family and changing the odds. Her stories have explored such topics as housing insecurity, resilience, and identity, and her writing has appeared in everything from children's books to animated storytelling. Together, they're co-editors of the upcoming anthology From Cocinas to Lucha Libre Ringsides, a collection of Latinx comic stories that spans everyday life and high-flying imagination, from kitchens and corner stores to wrestling rings and other dreamscapes. We're diving into the power of authentic storytelling, the importance of community-rooted narratives, and why comics continue to be one of the most vital cultural spaces we have. Frederick and Angela, welcome to Las Platicas with Comadres y Comics.
Thank you for having me, and Angela, thank you.
Yeah, delighted to be here.
Absolutely. We're so excited. I'm so excited after reading the anthology. It got me so just lots of memories coming up, growing up with my grandmother, and just all my food history that I have thanks to her, and our culture. And so much so, I went to the grocery store and I bought everything I needed to make calabazas, and I had it today for lunch. And that is like a big memory for me, that she would make that one of my kind of comfort foods. So your book is already making lots of it's really affecting the community. So thank you so much for that. So we're just going to go ahead and get started. I would like to know what conversations or needs in the Latinx community inspired this anthology, From Cocinas to Lucha Libre Ringsides. What drove this anthology into existence? And Frederick, we can start with you.
Yeah, so, oh my gosh, I mean, there's so many ways to answer that question, of course, but I'll try to keep it really simple. Basically, the mainstream sees us as only food, sometimes, in sports, and mostly as bad hombres, right? As malinches, as traders, as hypersexualized Latinas, etc. And I just mentioned that because what do we want to do? We want to celebrate something that is so deeply a part of who we are, food and sports, but celebrate it in all the full complexity and kind of wondrousness that it is in our lives, not just bringing us together over meals, the way we eat and the way we cook, slowing time down, expanding space, right? But also in the ways that sometimes food can, even within our own communities, work in sort of negative ways, right? We want the full complexity of the experience of this and our identities and our lives, and also to shout from rooftops that as Latinos, we share lots in common across the country in our communities, but we are also different. And we have different food practices and we have different memories that are attached to those. And all of that is so gorgeous and resplendent that that's kind of the big driver behind this anthology.
Amazing. Amazing.
Yeah, Angela, do you have anything that you would like to add?
I think Feta said it the best, to be honest. I mean, for me, just diving into this anthology was a few years in the making. The start of it was with Feta's first anthology, Tales from La Vida. I
Yes.
came across that at Powell's Bookstore back in 2019. And I thought, oh my gosh, it's so cool. Because it's so rare that I get to, and I think in general, most folks get to see a book that represents the spectrum of cultures and people and practices that fall into this big pan-ethnic term we use in the US of Latinx, Latino, Latina. There's so many people who get lumped into one big term, and there's so much texture across our different cultures. So yeah, I think that was seeing Tales from La Vida made me go like, oh wow, I'm so glad that someone is doing this, where we're getting to see the actual breadth of people and customs and traditions that go into a term that is so generally used in the US. So that made me really excited for it. And then when Fede approached me with this anthology idea for from Cocinas, I was like, yeah, we get to make a part 2, and it's going to focus on 2 really cool things that I love. Great. So yeah, I would say that was definitely part of the genesis for me.
That's great.
Amazing. Love it. So, the title alone evokes so much cultural richness from everyday life to over-the-top entertainment. How did you go about curating the stories that reflect both grounded realities and larger-than-life moments? And how did you go, why in specific from Cocinas to Lucha Libre Ringsides?
So I think we definitely leaned into more grounded stories for this anthology. A lot that you'll notice in the collection are memoir or very self-referential. But I think also just being very open to ones that are more fanciful, like the one about the marzipan that wants to get eaten, or the other one that I contributed is about like growing a literal cactus on your forehead.
I love that one.
Oh my gosh.
I adored that one. That one was really
It
good.
was so moving. And in such a it's from
nopal in la frente.
yeah, like it's so crazy because there was a part of me that kind of like rejected my culture when I was like a teenager, and one of the phrases that I heard was like el nopal lo tienes en la frente. And I'm just like, and you're seeing your story and the joy you had in like the progression, and I thought that was just such a safe space. And I was telling Kristen about it. I'm like, let's talk about this. Like, it was one of the first conversations we had about the book was this specific story.
Yeah, Sarah messaged me. She's like, did you get it? I'm like, get what? She's like, did you get it? The story about the nopales. And I'm like, oh, actually, no, I didn't. And so she told me that saying. I'm like, oh my gosh, I've never heard that saying before, but now it makes perfect sense. And Sarah was like, oh my God, it was amazing. And as she was just talking to me more about it from now, the perspective that I have of understanding that saying, I was like, oh my God, that's genius.
Yeah, it's both about the metaphor, and it's also a little bit of the silliness of, oh, if I had a cactus on my forehead, I would eat it. You know?
I feel like it felt so in line with a lot of the stories that were about resourcefulness as well. Like you're like there's such I love the emphasis on food. I grew up like watching some lucha libre, but for me, like a lot of what took over was like WWE and stuff like that. So there's like references right there. So I'm not as attached to lucha libre, but all the stuff about the cocinas and everything, I absolutely adored.
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you.
Would you like to add something to that, Frederick?
Yeah, one of the most fun in the section on sports, the one that Oscar Garza, Tim Fielder, and Rolo did, and the Final Four.
Yes,
And
yes.
I love the way that brings together. I mean, mine also brings together sports and food in a different way, but where you are in the ring and then you get these kind of cut, these cut scenes, these moments of pause, pastelito, and then you
Yes.
see he's like drinking just garbage stuff, right? And like pizza and whatever. And then you get to the end, and Felipe, after we've learned that he's been training with the jump rope, even though he's the smallest, and in eating healthy and drinking his milk, wins. And he says at the end, like, yeah, it must have been something it must have been something I ate, and I love the way that even though it's from Cocinas to Lucha Libre Ringsides, there's also a way that, as Jennifer just talked about, sports and food is very much interwoven into the fabric of who we are. And it's wildly fun and joyful. And I love that we are celebrating the laugh out loud parts of our culture as well, right? There's trauma, there's violence, we've inherited legacies of this kind of coloniality and colorism and division and queer phobia in our communities that we're pushing hard against. At the same time we can also open and invite the joy and the love and the celebration.
Awesome.
My husband said it best when he inquired, "Oh, what is the anthology that you are reading and that you're going to be discussing today?" And I told him the title. I said it's basically about Latinx culture with regards to food and sports. And he said, "Oh, that's perfect because food is your favorite sport." I said, "You know what? You're right."
Oh my god.
Exactly. How did you make sure that the stories felt true to the Latinx culture, but still connect with the larger audience?
Yeah, I think for me, honestly, just recognizing that like Latinx culture is a fallacy all on its own, because there's not just one culture, right? But rather many different cultures, and my experiences are going to be very different from a Puerto Ricans or Dominicans or someone from a South American country like Uruguay. Be a very, very different experience, I'm sure. And so, understanding then going in with collecting this anthology and understand that something that is not true for me does not automatically make it untrue for someone else is very important. And so just being open to like, okay, let's see what we get. I mean, that's kind of what anthology is, right? It's a box of chocolates. So when something comes in, I'm like, oh, that's interesting, or I would never thought about this way. And then that's just someone else's worldview and perspective on this. And that's how they have interacted with their own particular culture. And also recognizing, and I think that's kind of the fun thing about an anthology like this in particular, you also have experiences like Mexican American experiences, which are very much rooted in both like that nexus of Mexico and the US, and it's very messy. And so I think being also attentive to like what is the blending of both your home culture or the nation of origin for your parents or family, and how has that now impacted you in the US or elsewhere if you've moved to a different country, either within Latin America or outside and beyond. I think that there's a lot of richness that we get to see, that everyone has their own spin on it. And again, I think that's why the anthology itself is so important, because when you get everyone's many different perspectives, that's when you can step back and see the whole tapestry of how we're all collective.
Yeah, I particularly really enjoyed the story about like the tamales, that the many different types of tamales, and kind of it's the same idea, but it's also different, and but we're all the same. Like it's such a like united kind of story. I really, really love that one. Uh, did you want to add anything, Frederick?
I just want to say that, one of the wonderful things about an anthology like this is, well, first of all, we pretty much know all of the storytellers, the creatives, right, in it. Some were, a couple were new to me, but Angela and I mean, it's already kind of, in a way, it's sort of self-curated. It's already like, okay, we know that all we have to do is say, we're going to invite 40 creators from across the Latinx kind of experience in diaspora to dig deep into a lived experience with food or sports or both, and let them make the magic happen. So that's kind of like it. I mean, we definitely, it's a lot of work post-production, and I have to give a shout out to OSU Press and the team, because this kind of stuff is a monster, right? It's not just writing, alphabetic typing and stuff. I mean, as you know. But to that point too, it's not just the diversity of experience within the Latino, Latinx, Latina communities that's being expressed in and through food, and that very individualized experience of it that reaches into family and community. But it's also, Angela and I talked about this, like the choice of your color palette that you use, the line work that Angela uses that's very different from Andres or Oscar, for instance, just off the top of my head. And that Angela's line work and her hand print, her autographic print on my comic even, makes it a collective, collaborative experience. So it's not just my story, it's our co-created story.
Wonderful.
That's really amazing how you're saying that, everybody that is involved came together and kind of took on a world of its own. I always hear creators saying, I don't make these stories. It's kind of the stories just make themselves and I just follow along. I've heard that multiple times from writers and creators. But I'm wondering, because we definitely recognize also a lot of the creators that are participating in this book, and some of them we've read and reviewed, some of them we've interviewed. And I'm wondering, are there any that have contributed that you, before you even started, thought, hey, we need to have this person participate? Or were there any specific stories that you're like, okay, we need to have this particular type of story in this collection? You want to start, Frederick?
Sure. Some of it was, we knocked on doors and folks were also really busy. So we're like, oh, dang. So, I mean, we have a gorgeous, beautiful lineup in what we finally have. There were, and I mean, we'll be honest, Angela and I were definitely very mindful of kind of diversity of all the full range of who we are, as a people, sexuality, gender, et cetera, et cetera. And so that was very much front and center on curating, right? We wanted to make sure that that was there. Of course, there's just like life stuff that happens and people can't do it, for whatever reason, or they didn't get the email. I feel bad because Lalo wanted to do it, but he never got my email.
Oh no.
Oh,
Wow.
Yeah, so like, but
gotta check that
it's cool.
spam mail.
Yeah, he threw down. He gave us a nice blurb. But yeah, so I'm trying to kind of work my way back to the question, but basically, what was it? Did I answer anything there?
Oh, well, I just was asking, was there a specific creator or creative team that you already knew that you wanted them to participate, or even a type of story that you knew needed to be included?
Angela, I'll let you take it from here.
Oh, I mean, at that point, I I would say, like, just for myself, yes, both Fede and I were very mindful of making sure that this collection is inclusive and also diverse across a range of identities. But I would say also, I went in with no expectations insofar as I want to be open to whatever people had to talk about.
Right.
And I think because of that, we got a very rich and diverse collection too. For instance, I feel that a lot of people tend to associate food with fond memories, which is great, you know, like cooking with your abuela, things like that, sharing a warm meal, something like that during the holidays. But we also had folks who were talking about real traumatic moments with food, and also food poverty, not having access to enough, developing eating disorders because of it. I think that being able to also talk about the range of expression within these two very big and broad categories of food and sports, that really helped round out the nuance that this anthology brings overall.
No, especially it's there was the one about the food insecurity and like how like they would go to fast foods and stuff like that and how they developed a
Tengo hambre, yeah.
So yeah, tengo hambre. And that one is that one brought back traumatic memories for me that I didn't know as well, but it also opened up my eyes to something that I did not know I had been ignoring that was within my sister. And I realized that this kind of explains her behavior as well. And I just had to moment where I had to like look away from that story, and I was just like, oh wow, this is a lot. But those stories still need to be told, because or else I would have continued ignoring things like that, or like been like, why is she like this? And then when the answer is so very obviously right there that someone has had that same experience and they were able to put it in art and in words. So thank you for that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, let me just add something too, Jennifer, to that, which is just a kind of, I mean, I don't need to remind us in the Zoom room or in this space right now, but the immediacy of the visual as the dominant in comics, I think, is particularly exemplified here. And I'm using all these kind of like, you know, big words, or I guess polysyllabic words. But what I basically mean is like, one, the visuals that hit us every day are constant and never stopping, and it's a constant flow. What these do is say, hold on, yes, we're going to use a visual to tell a story, and we're going to invite you actually to slow read, to slow eat, to slow smell, to slow taste, touch, feel, experience. And with that, maybe go on a journey. And that journey might take you somewhere that's startling, and a reminder of something in your deep past. But it is powerful in a world today where I see, myself included, swept into the fast food of life. And that is swiping and scrolling and not actually taking a minute to breathe.
Wow.
I love that. But we'll move on to our next question as well.
That's a little too deep.
Yeah. No, I enjoyed it too, because it was I wasn't saying that it was a fast read, but it was there was definitely moments where I was savoring the stories because they were making me remember things. Like Kristen said in the beginning, how she made squash and stuff like that. And as I was reading them, and when I was reading Teresa's story too, I couldn't help but like remember like some of like I didn't grow up with flour tortillas, and this will always, I will die on this hill, but corn tortillas will always be better. But to me, like flour tortillas don't evoke that sensation in me. But what does do is the smell of like of maize, like real maize, and like that's what nishtamal, yeah. And so and just like even reading that, I had to take a moment to close my eyes and like savor, like not exactly Teresa's like flour tortillas, but my own memory of what brings forward to that, and I adored that. So What was the editorial process like between the two of you? How did your individual experiences shape your collaboration?
I would say, well, one, I appreciate that Fede has already done this before, so like I really leaned on him a lot, and he did the lion's share of like going like, okay, we're gonna organize it like this, and these are gonna be the categories. Like, because I mean, like I see all these stories come in, I'm like, oh wow, they all seem so cool and also so individualized. I really appreciate that Fede was able to see the larger themes across the collection, and so that's how they wound up being organized. And when then I did a read through of them, like, yeah, these all make sense. This is definitely in the decolonization batch. This one is in the healing side, and I think that helped give continuity to the overall anthology.
Awesome.
I mean, I just love working with Angela, and not just, you know, curating and kind of putting this together, which was a joy with Angela, but also, gosh, you know, it's like the rest of us here together. Like, I wrote a script for my comic vignette, and I think I shared maybe 3 or 4 images with Angela, but she just got it. Like, I didn't have to, like, you know, do a whole like song and dance so that Angela could understand what this was in my life. And you know, it's kind of like I mentioned that because that's kind of how it was for the whole project.
Awesome. That is so cool. I know you touched a little bit before on like the visuals and the art and maybe taking your time with it, and the pace of it all. But I wanted to know from you both. Uh, Comics are very powerful medium for telling Latinx stories specifically. Like, how can you elaborate a little bit more on that?
I think it's great for both people who have a Latinx identity and also people who don't. Because comics they're a visual medium, and they're that nice nexus of literature that is both the text side and then also the visual side. And so when you engage with a comic, your brain is taking in 2 types of information at once. It's taking in written information, and it's also taking in the visual information. And the neat part about comics compared to strictly prose literature or poetry literature, that's only text, is that with just text literature, it's up to the reader to have to use their imagination to visualize it, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. With a comic or any type of sequential art, you're being shown directly, no, look like this. And so it's a different way of engaging with the creator's perspective, because they're showing you, this is what I want you to envision. It is specifically this. And we actually have a number of studies that say that when kids and young people read, they're building their empathy muscle, because they're having to put on their cap of like, oh, how would I see this from this other person's perspective? And I think there isn't a distinction of building empathy between whether it's text literature or if it's a graphic novel or a comic or other type of sequential art, because both of you require to be able to ingest and understand the way that creator is seeing or phrasing things. So if it's text literature, you're using your imagination to build it in your head and go like, okay, I think this is what they mean. Ooh, let me experience that. And if it's a comic, though, you're going, oh, this is how they saw it. And you internalize that visual. So I think that for Latinx, this means, oh, wow, I get to see like a memory from childhood or a parallel experience from someone else, and that resonates with me. For someone who does not have a Latinx identity, it brings that experience closer. It brings it into proximity. The reader now gets proximal to this experience. And I think that is so necessary, perhaps more today than ever before, because it breaks down the sense of othering. It breaks down the way that Latinx people, especially in the US, are often seen as derivative or different or other, and where we have a white cisgender, usually male norm. And I think in being able to experience a comic and get to see that perspective and be able to enjoy and, for lack of a better metaphor, using a food one here, ingest it, I think that means a lot.
That's all. That's awesome. That's really awesome. Would you like to add anything to that, Frederick?
Yeah, just so, no, I love absolutely. Angela's brilliant, of course. And I would just say that it's also a really strong reminder that one, you don't have to be, I don't know, Hemingway or James Joyce or Virginia Woolf or whatever the big kind of literary kind of author person we're going to name right now, to create something that invites an experience that is at once familiar and also made vibrantly new. And I think that comics, and this is why I teach them in my classes, even in classes that are not comics classes, invite us to become authors, competent authors of our own story.
That is amazing. I really love that you guys elaborated a lot on that. Specifically, like, I think it should be on a t-shirt, comics create empathy. That would be just amazing.
Yeah. And I really love the idea of comics being this medium that are inviting, sharing culture within our community, but also inviting others in, because I think it's so very true that when others are able to read our stories and see our stories and kind of live through the creator's story through comics, it does really combat against that otherness, because of the empathy and being able to, in this specific day and time and just horrible and political environment that we are in now, is so important to continue to do that. So thank you so much, specifically for that. I'm wondering, Comadres y Comics was started as a way to be able to highlight Latinx representation in the comic book industry, because I was just seeing such a lack of not creators and stories, but of sharing that. So my question is, what gaps in the comic industry in terms of Latinx representation, genres, or formats were you hoping that this anthology could help fill? And okay, we'll start with Angela.
I would say for me, I really hope that fills the variety gap, actually, because I feel oftentimes if we're so lucky and our books aren't bound nowadays, but a class or a grade or a school will go like, yes, and this is the one, like Latina author you're going to get to read this year or for your entire curriculum.
Yeah.
And then that's it. And it leaves so much to be desired, because if you've only read one Latinx author, you've only read one Latinx author.
Yeah.
I think being able to have a collection, especially a visual one, it's so inviting, it's so accessible. Mm-hmm. It encourages the reader to poke around. You don't have to read an anthology in chronological order. You can just skip around through it, pick out a story, go back to it, read a few more. I mean, that honestly, that's how I consume a lot of books. I was a kid who would read a lot of books at once, not because I was smart or anything, because I got bored. Little ADHD brain. And so, like, I would read the first chapter of one book, the first chapter of a couple other books, figure out which one I liked best, focus on one for a little bit, and then maybe hop back and forth. Oh, and of course, I had to read the ending first. So I was a monster. But I think that going back to this anthology from Cocinas, it helps bring in that variety. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, if we're so lucky, maybe someday we'll get to be required reading on somebody's list. But I think at the bare minimum, it offers the reader a chance to go like, oh, look at a whole bunch of different voices, a whole bunch of different experiences. Oh, here's a Cuban experience. Oh, here's a Salvi experience. And so it opens up so much more to get to poke around at. And so it sparks some of that curiosity, which honestly is just the baseline of getting to know someone.
Absolutely. Frederick, did you have anything to add?
Yeah, so I mean, there was a moment pre-pandemic when I started getting excited because the mainstream started to actually like, you know, we were in writing rooms and we were like producing shows and we were like, we had like a bunch of stuff on Netflix and this and that. And then of course, you know, by the way, you know, Angela's show too, which is happening right now, which is awesome. The Primos.
Yeah.
But of course, you know, the second we get excited is the second that we also like deflate, because what is there now? You know, and my point is, from Cocinas to Lucha Libre Ringsides, among other, you know, collections coming out of the Latinx community, is exactly what we've been asking for the mainstream culture and imaginary to do, but has never done. Instead, what it does is it serves up whatever kind of essentialized idea it has of our community, and if it sells, it continues to just push that. And that's if we're lucky. And then when we finally knock down doors and get something that is interesting and complicated, it gets canceled. So yes, what, you know, going back to Angela's point, you know, the significance of having in one volume and between two covers this massive range of experience in and through the visual, the word drawn form of narrative storytelling is just such an honor, privilege, and extraordinary moment. And it's something that I wish was commonplace, but it's not.
Wow.
As a Latina reading the stories, I did also appreciate so much of that diversity, because, like Jen mentioned earlier, we have our own experiences, but to have such a range of different cultures within the Latino community is so amazing for me. And Sarah and I were messaging back and forth saying, hey, did you know what this was? Or I had to look this up. I'd never heard of that before. Or there's this dish, but they call it this. And I ate it like this with my grandmother. And it really goes to show how we are just such a big melting pot within our own community of just diversity and amazingness. And I just appreciated that so much in reading this. And I learned a lot as well. And Sarah always says, I love a book where I learn. And I definitely did. So thank you for that.
Yeah,
What
absolutely.
is it? I think I was like, I saw something. It was the Nuevo Mexicano Piñones, and I was just like, "What is that?" And then I looked up piñones, but it was only showing me a place in Puerto Rico, and I was just like, "I don't think you can eat a place." I mean, you could, but yeah, there were definitely. I was looking up some stuff because I was just like, I don't know what this is, or just like the terms in Spanish are so like they vary so differently from culture to culture as well that you can get turned around. I know one that confuses people a lot is pulque and pulique. A difference. One's a drink, one's a food in Guatemala, and it's that one can get people confused a lot. Angela, so I have a question for you. What was it like shifting from solo writing to editorial collaboration, especially on a project that means so much culturally?
Yeah, so I do write collaboratively in animation.
Okay.
And so while, for instance, on a show you might see one writer as like the lead writer who's credited with the episode, a lot of hands touch any given episode in animation. So, for instance, for Primos on Disney, which you can watch on Disney Plus.
Yes, shout it out.
But on Primos, in our writers' room, our room was about 7 people deep.
Oh, okay.
So 5 staff writers, an associate writer, and our story editor, and that doesn't count the days when our showrunner would be there too. But one writer would come with a nugget of an idea, and then we all pitch on different beats that could happen during that story, any other jokes that might come up. That writer is then assigned the premise. They work on that. They bring back the premise. It's noted up, and then we riff on that to get it to outline. And then that writer takes the writes of the outline, eventually takes the outline to script, etc. And we all do the final edit pass as a full room. So that way there's consistency across the stories and the voice of the show as well. So I would say, yeah, there were a lot of moments where it kind of felt like that.
Yeah.
Is back and forth, making sure that Fed and I were coordinated, making sure that we were in communication with each other. And it's like, oh, okay, are we on time? You know, what are deadlines? And just having that, I would say, that synergy between the two of us. Also, I want to go back to what Fed was saying earlier about his own piece and the Great Chila Standoff, and what fun it was to get to illustrate that. Because when it's Fede's story, so I got to take a break as the writer. But it was cool to be able to get the script, because before going into animation writing, I'd taken storyboarding classes, and so and before that I did prose, and so I've been working on like YA novels, picture books, stuff like that. But doing a storyboarding class we were given 2 pages of an actual animated show script, and then we're asked to illustrate or board it. And to get this script from Fede and being told, okay, now go, I was like, oh, this is fun. Yeah, I haven't had a chance where like someone's already written the story and I get to draw it. That was just such a blast to do, and to go like, oh, okay, what'd your friends look like? Oh, okay, give something to work with so I can, kind of caricaturize them a little bit, give them a cartoony face. And just that was so much fun to get to do and to bring that to life as a comic. So yeah, having those collaborative moments throughout this anthology, that was a real joy.
That's pretty cool. Very talented. Writing, drawing, you name it.
Well, I write professionally because, I can always scream and yell at a keyboard. It's fun, it's gentle. Let me have my happy times.
Right. That's awesome. Frederick, you've edited and written dozens of books about comics and culture. How does this anthology differ from the previous work you've done?
So let me first just say that in many ways it kind of works in the same direction, which is the direction of the multi-prong approach. And a good example of that is, not only do I write, books about Latinx comics and theorize them for like the greater kind of academy and scholarship, but I've also been doing it very purposefully with in mind, making it easier for the next generations. And of course, Teresa was one of my students, my PhD students, and you've met many others, to be able to actually do that as a PhD. And I mention that because in a way, like a comics anthology and Latinographix itself as a venue for publishing Latine creatives is part of that drive of not just opening a door, but throwing them all open for us. Mm-hmm. And yes, this is one that invites you to mirror and reflect and to even expand your experience. But in a way, the scholarship, the drive behind the scholarship is very similar. I want my PhDs, my Latine PhDs to come along and say, I can actually write a book on this stuff. My next project is going to be a chapter on From Cocinas to Lucha Libre Ringsides. And how cool is that? And guess what? I don't need to feel pressure to do that dissertation on Proust, which, doesn't have any kind of meaning for me. So there's that. Finally, though, let me just say that how is this different? I feel like this differs from something like Tales from La Vida, in that kind of expansiveness. I mean, literally, like page-wise, it's bigger. but also as a kind of almost part like humble recognition of the vast experiences and stories that we have, almost like an altar celebration, and also a party. Like it, I feel when I open this, and even the cover conveys this. Yes, there is struggle and there's trauma, but there's also we are having a dang good time. And guess what? You're also welcome to the party.
That's amazing. And I think that actually leads directly into what my next question is, and probably even answers it succinctly. And that was, what did you hope readers took away from Cocinas to Lucha Libre Ringsides? And that cover is so amazing. The the just vibrancy and the colors, and just lucha libre luchadora eating and just enjoying life and enjoying tacos is just perfect. So if you have anything you want to add to what you just said, go ahead. But I honestly think you answered that perfectly. So thank you. Do you have anything, Angela, that you hope that readers take away from the anthology?
I mean, it's pretty much what we've been saying before, that there's many different voices, that there's a lot of avenues to connect across food and sports, both within the community and outside of the Latinx community. Like, I loved Charlene and David Bull's comic on making chile rellenos, for Charlene making chile rellenos with her mom.
Yeah.
And maybe for some of our readers, they weren't making chile rellenos, maybe it was something else. Maybe it was a sofrito. Maybe it was, I've never actually eaten a casserole before, but I hear that is a food that is eaten. Maybe it was something different. But quarreling with a parent or another family member who's just trying to teach you a thing and you're struggling, oh, that's so real. That reminded me of so many times I've been in the kitchen with my dad and he was just like, get on my, and I'd be like, yes, chef, So yeah, there's, saying that with my mic all the way down here. I think that there's a lot of things that I hope folks take away from it, but above anything else, I hope they take away the connection.
Absolutely. I'm so glad you mentioned that story, because I was telling Kristen I had a similar thing happen to me. I don't quite remember what we were frying, but I lifted it up and dropped it in the oil, and the oil splashed in my face, and I had a red thing here for so long, and people kept making fun of me. They're like, oh, you have a pimple, because I was young. I was like 10 or something. No, I got burned by the oil because I didn't listen to my mom in the kitchen. So, yeah.
Okay. How do the both of you recommend listeners support the broader ecosystem of Latinx indie comics and creators?
Find your local comic book store and ask what events they're doing. Especially
we love that
September
response.
15th and October 15th. We get this 1 month a year. It's not even in the same stupid month. Anyways, but, there is a historical reason for that, but still, it's like, can't check one box, can't pick one month. Anyway, yeah, if folks can go to the local comic book store, they can order books from the creators featured in this anthology. Go to your local indie Comic-Con and support your local Latinx creators. They need your love too. These are all ways that you can go out and engage with the folks who are making these things, because let's face it, the best kind of art is art that's made by humans.
Yes. Absolutely. The content list in the beginning of all the creators is an amazing place to start. All of the creators have other works that they have already done. Like I mentioned, we have read and reviewed or interviewed a lot of them on there. We can highly recommend a lot of the creators on there and books that they've written and drawn. So 100%. And yes, shout out to all your local comic shops. Definitely go to them and see if they have this book, and if not, make sure that they know where they can get it. Frederick, did you have anything you wanted to add?
I think you covered it. Kickstarters too.
Yes, yes, yes. Yes, absolutely.
I wanted to say something and now I forgot. It had something to do with like, oh yes, yes. So reading the book, as I'm reading it and I'm looking at the creators, and some of them had their hashtag and stuff like that, and I just started adding people on Instagram. But also, it felt like a lot of the people that I already know as creators and artists and writers and everything, it felt like visiting them, we're going to a
Mhm.
party and they, oh, he's here and she's here and Julio Anta's here, and it's like, well, we're all here together. It was really great. You guys did an amazing job. I'm a real fan. It was just such a great, like, I was like, oh man, it's like 200 and something pages. But then I just read it, took a moment, took a beat, like you said, and just kind of took my time with it. And as I was taking my time with it, I also would break for moments where I conversated with Kristen about it. So it not only was just like a very beautiful piece of art, come together just beautifully, it also opened conversations, and has had us talking and stuff, and I was just like, what, really grateful for that. Thank you guys, that was really amazing.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Anthologies are
Can I?
cool like that, though, right? Like,
Mm.
because
Yeah.
like that, it's like the Leonardo DiCaprio meme of like, oh, going up to television, going, I see it.
yeah, exactly, that was really
Know
really
them.
special. We have a segment on our podcast called Chisme de la Semana. So I wanted to know the chisme on what is next on the horizon for you both. What projects did you guys want to highlight and stuff like that?
See Feta pointing at me. Okay. I'm currently working on animated short film. It
Nice.
is through the Latino Film Institute, sponsored by Netflix, and the short will be out next year at the Los Angeles Latino International Film Festival. So keep your
Oh,
eyes peeled in May, early June 2026.
awesome.
Very cool. Can't wait. So I have um, three really exciting projects. One is actually it's titled Shakespeare Reimagined, a Latinx Comics Remix, and it's volume one.
Ooh.
And I kind of spent some time thinking about Shakespeare's plays, and the first grouping includes Romeo and Juliet and Othello and Macbeth and stuff. And then I was like, hold on, I'm gonna kind of distill them down to their essence and reconstruct them as Latinx borderlands youth stories.
Wow.
That sounds really
And
cool.
yeah, so this comic book will drop, in the spring. And instead of Macbeth, it's Mac and Quo, and they're like a queer couple. One's Latina, Mexicana, and the other's Afro Latina. And in the original Macbeth, it's Macbeth, and he's one of the things Shakespeare kind of builds in is this really deep friendship he has with Banquo, but never really explores. And I'm like, okay, that's my interest in this one. The other one is Romea and Julian, and one is Romea is a daughter of an industrialist who's kind of tied into the cartels on the Mexico side of the border, and Julian is Kickapoo indigenous Latino on the U.S. side. So anyway, that's the Romeo and Juliet, and that's kind of got all sorts of really cool, interesting things. And then
I'm a
Hamlet.
big Shakespeare nerd. I'm really hyped for this.
I know.
Everything that you keep saying, I'm just like Macbeth is probably my favorite play, so I'm here
Awesome.
for
Okay.
it.
And then Ophelia, I'm like, okay, well, Hamlet's cool, but actually the real heartbeat of that play is Ophelia.
Mm-hmm.
And so Ophelia is the primary interest and driver of that story. And Ophelia isn't a tragic story in my reconstruction. Ophelia is Hamlet dies, all that stuff happens, and Ophelia comes into her powers as a 18-year-old young curandera, and uses those powers, and it's all organically woven into the story with her marigolds and her different ingredients and potions to part the waters of the Rio Bravo,
Wow.
so that children and the most vulnerable children and women don't drown.
Wow.
Oh my gosh.
When is this out, Feta? You said spring next year. Do you have a date yet?
Not yet.
Oh,
We are eagerly
yeah.
anticipating it.
Oh, you are good. This is everyone's going to be like,
Well, we'll definitely have to have you back on to talk all about that when the time comes, because that does sound really, really amazing. So we've all talked about how this anthology has affected us, even down to the minute detail. In one of the stories, somebody mentioned green palm olive.
Yes!
My grandmother used to use green palm olive for everything. You know how in my big fat Greek wedding it was Windex? For my grandmother, it was green palm olive. And she always had the nicest hands and nails, and I grew up thinking that was like great skincare for your hands, because I mean, that's all she would wash dishes with. And I hadn't thought of green palm olive in decades. So that's just to say that this book has just brought up so many memories and so much emotion for all of us. And so I would like for you to share how other people can experience this amazingness as well. How can our listeners acquire the book and also find you both online?
so it's available for pre-orders right now. It will be officially dropped on the August 13th. And it's widely available. So, of course, Amazon, but, you're going to get a better discount, better service if you go straight to OSU Press, the Ohio State University Press, Mad Creek Books, and, of course, anywhere online pretty much. It's super affordable too for something that big and with all of those incredible images. So yeah, rush out, go get your pre-orders. And I can be found at Professor Latinx everywhere on kind of like Insta and wherever. So at Professor Latinx.
Awesome. How about you, Angela? Where can we find you online?
You can find me on Instagram at AngelaMSanchez.writer, and then on Blue Sky, just at Angela M. Sanchez. Yeah, I have a phone book name. Sometimes it gets hard to claim it first.
No worries. At
Awesome.
least you beat the people on Blue Sky.
All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to sit here with us and talk about your amazing book project, that anthology. It was just really great. And thank you for trusting us to read it before the interview, because, man, we have so many feels. Like the one about like the tortilla de harina is because my mom would go to work and the next door neighbor would take care of me, and she would make tortillas every day. And she would clean her restroom every day. So it was a tortilla and Clorox smell every day. And I just kind of smelled that as I read the story. But yeah, no, it was just really great. It reminded me of so many memories that I've had. But thank you again for taking the time to talk to us and telling us where we can find the book and letting our audience know more about the book and the process of making it happen. And thank you so much for making it happen. So we have been your hosts. I'm Sarah.
I'm Kristen.
And I'm Jen.
I'm Angela, and don't forget to like and subscribe.
And I'm Frederick, or otherwise known as Professor Latinx. And yes, like and subscribe right now.
Yay!
Yay! Thank you, guys.